I think initially animating a minifig for some animators was a little challenging because it was a very different show. We did a lot of tests early on where, for example, we did a lot of tests of vehicles. And although the animation looks great, it's fantastic, it's funny, it's humorous, it's appealing, a lot of the animation just was too detailed and had too much follow through and overlap and all of the things that make traditional animation quite appealing to look at. And right there, it didn't have the qualities that we were looking at, that handmade feel. So, you know, like the vehicles in the films, they needed to feel like a child's hand was actually manipulating them. So, you know, breaking that down. So a lot of the animators need to be retrained and unlearn some of those, you know, traditional tricks of, you know, appealing animation to try and get out of the headspace of, you know, a child or a stop motion animator. And, you know, in that, there is an appeal as well. There's a playfulness to that. And sort of cracking the surface of that and getting into that took a little bit of time. But I think after a little while, I think it took a few weeks for some animators just to get used to the idea of how we were animating this production on twos. We also used an animation library as well, and that really helped. So a lot of the best bits, facial or body or vehicle-wise, were put into a library, and that was always something that the animators could draw on as a starting point. But yeah, we did a lot of testing early on, and there was a couple of pieces that really sort of eventually got us there. It was the right combination of, you know, really careful placement of silhouette of characters and how they use their arms. You know, just being inventive, like, you know, for example, shrugging. You know, we can't shrug, we can't bend the shoulders. So, you know, but there are all sorts of tricks that we could do. I mean, again, it's stop motion animation, so there's a little bit of liberty there. You know, we could pull the joints out of their sockets a little bit, and we could move them around, and we could shrug them up. So as long as we hid a lot of the things that, you know, would cause, you know, problems in a real world, but still looked plausible. There are a lot of techniques I think Chris McKay sort of brought to the table in that respect. So there were things that they'd do, because he actually did a short brick film for Robot Chicken called Lego Launch Failure. And in that, what they had done, and he shared this with us at the time, was they would do things like file down the neck peg a little bit, just to give a little bit of freedom so that the head could wobble side to side just a little bit. And they would use things like glue and all sorts of things in the joints so that they could actually pose them and give a little. So it's still Lego, it's still, you know, following the rules. You know, we're not pushing an arm through a shoulder or deforming something, but, you know, we were playing with that a little bit and pulling the sockets apart a little bit, just so that we got a little bit of freedom in there. And that kind of, you know, really helped to sell the performance of these characters. So finding interesting and fun ways to make a minifig shrug, you know, or dance, or you know, swing a sword around. We got away with a lot over some frames. So there was one piece where we did a lot of action and a lot of brick building, and, you know, with lots of fast movements, you kind of get lost in the performance. So with fast movement, we could pull the joints apart and then put them back together very quickly. You could sell the idea of a character swinging a sword without actually bending the elbow by doing that. The effects department used a lot of simulation. Again, they went through a look development period, and a lot of effects tests were done early on. We experimented with real effects. The scene where President Business, or Lord Business I should say, there's a scene where Lord Business kicks down the door and there's a lot of smoke that billows around the character. So initially we did some tests, and we did some traditional fluid simulations of like dry ice coming around him. So, and then we sort of looked at that, and although it fit in with the brick film and, you know, using some real elements, the effects team went about doing a lot of effects tests that were brick based. So they would build plumes of smoke out of bricks. So they used a traditional approach to do a fluid sim to generate particles, but then fill that with bricks and attach bricks to these particles. So I think they had a lot of fun as well, but there were always, in any given effects review, there was one standout funny piece. So I remember we did the train smoke, and you know, we tried lots of different puffs of different brick types, and there was a particular piece. It's the wig that the clown minifig uses, which is it's quite lumpy and it's quite spherical, and you know, having multitudes of those puff out of a steam engine was just hilarious. So we didn't actually end up going with that particular, but there was always a moment in an effects review where there was a particular brick type that was just hilarious. I remember the fairy wands was used quite a bit for sparks and hits here and there. So it was just hilarious to see different types of bricks used in different ways to achieve, similar silhouettes to, electricity or water or smoke. So there was always a lot of fun stuff that they did. So yeah, there was a lot of simulation done as well. I think there was a scene where Emmett and Lucy enter the Wild West, where Lucy jumps on her horse and she rides the horse like a traditional minifig would. But then Emmett jumps on his horse, and we had provided the animators, so a minifig horse basically has a little section in the middle where the minifig can sit. And often when a horse doesn't have a minifig, there are some bricks that are placed in there to sort of make the horse look whole. So when we delivered that to animation, we delivered them a horse that had those extra bricks that they could move out of the horse and put a minifig in, or they could leave those bricks there and they could just animate a horse that was not mounted or didn't have a rider. And there's a great scene where Emmett and Lucy are sort of walking through the Wild West, walking through the back streets, and Lucy's riding her horse prim and proper, and Emmett's sitting there, with his feet folded up, flat on the horse, in a way that a minifig simply wouldn't be attached to a horse. So right there was we delivered an asset that we could do anything to. We could do the traditional minifig on a horse, or we could use it as a standard horse, but then the animators used it in a way that wasn't really intended. And it was just hilarious to see Emmett there just riding a horse in a very strange way that a minifig would never ride a horse, and just bouncing around on the back of a horse, and that was just hilarious. So there were a lot of moments like that. And there was the vehicles in the film. A lot of them don't have doors. If you, like the plumber van, for example, you would have to take the roof off to place the minifig in. So there's a scene in the film, there's a top-down shot where all of the characters are leaving their apartments and jumping in their vehicles. All the characters pull the roofs off their cars and jump in. So that was something that we really didn't anticipate either. So we had given the animators a lot of controls to do that in a lot of the rigs so they could pull them apart, because we really didn't know how they were going to animate them or how to get their characters in their vehicles. There was another scene. There was where Emmett and Lucy and Vitruvius escape the robo-sheriff in the Wild West. Emmett lands in a pig pen, gets tangled up in some rope, while Lucy goes through a barn and constructs a Lamborghini out of wood. And then the pigs and the string tumble across the shot, land on top of the hood of the Lamborghini. And the way that we built that asset, the string actually threads through the bricks. And we didn't know how the animators were going to resolve this, because there was a shot where we had to connect the pigs to the vehicle and off they went. And there was this fantastic moment where an animator, basically, we cut away to Lucy, and then she does a little flick of her wrists with the string in her hands. We cut to the next shot, and the pigs are already assembled, and they just fall in line. And it's just this, we cut over that. There's this moment where we just cut over that, and it's just hilarious. And we didn't anticipate that. We didn't know how we were going to attach the pigs and the string to the wooden Lamborghini. Through the inventiveness of just popping things into place in a stop motion style, they created something that was really funny. It's been fantastic. I saw a few great talks from ILM and DreamWorks this morning. So it's always great to be here. I mean, everyone's so enthusiastic about CG, and it's great to be surrounded by so many people that are. So it's been really great.